All right, hey everybody, TG Watkins here. Let's see, it is May 31st. We got the last day of the month, so let's see if any kind of shenanigans going out there with end of the month type activity. Anyway, if you guys are interested in how I look at the markets and the Moxie indicator, you can come over to simplertrading.com/Moxie. You can try out a trial, or you can pick up the indicator and also any of the classes that we have to offer for it. All right, so one of the other things we were looking at, let me get over here to the SPY. And, the SPY is pretty much the middle road. It is in between, say, the NASDAQ, which is up a lot, and versus the IWM, which just can't pick itself up off the floor. So far, it's been holding its level for a year, and so we've got this kind of middle section going on. Meanwhile, the Dow just kind of trucking along, too. It's not doing too much. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. And so I think right now, the thing that we really need to be looking at is if the NASDAQ, because yes, it has been the big mover in through here. And, we kind of had what seems, I wouldn't say it's a blow off top yet, because we don't know that it's a top, but it's definitely an area where we should be seeing or expecting price to, pull back. This is pretty frothy up here. And one thing that we were looking at was just before NVIDIA earnings, we were already getting a little bit up there, a little frothy. You could see there was that bump in through there, and we did need to pull back, and so we got that. But then NVIDIA earnings came out and really kind of took the NASDAQ and then the semis SOXX, a little bit into orbit and well outside of these moving averages and 30 ATRs. So very extended on that point. And we could see here, same kind of deal. So we should, at the very least, be expecting some sort of pullback. The question is kind of what? And one thing that I mentioned to the Moxie subscribers today was, if we look at the Riot, for example, and let me just clean this up. So let's see, maybe like, there you go. And you can see it had a really big move also back in through here. And you could see it was outside of 30 ATR, gapping off the moving averages. And the best case scenario is that when it pulled back to about the 21 EMA. And why I say best case is because it basically went there and then leveled out. Now we don't yet know if this is actually going to continue upward, although I would have to give it that bias considering what the S&P did and considering the moving averages are stacked properly, and basically just that it's not going down yet. And so that's kind of one of the biggest factors that we're looking at. But so best case scenario is it pulled back and found some support in through there. And so if we look at something like AMD, this thing is wildly up there. And you could just see this is not a place that you want to go pick it up as a initial long. If you're a day trader or you're a short-term trader and you can snag this for a few days, more power to you. But you can see that generally, like here, these are not places that you want to initiate a long. It's where you want to pare it back or take some off and take some profits and move up your stops and that kind of situation. And so we look at this and say, well, best case scenario, like Riot, is maybe it comes down somewhere to the 21 EMA, finds some support, and then we see what it does from there, possibly. Otherwise, what it can do is go to the 21 and just kind of keep going, and get to the 21 and keep going, keep going down, and get to the 21 and then it just kind of keeps going down. And so that's the problem with something like this is, we're not sure if it's going to be coming into support or not into support, and that's what we need to be prepared for. All right, so looks like we got quite a few people over in YouTube land, so good to see you. B1, let's see. Moxie question, have you looked at reverse divergences as opposed to standard divergences? Example of reverse divergence is when price is making a higher high while the indicator makes a lower low. Unlike standard divergences, which are counter trend, reverse divergences are in trend and bullish for MACD and other indicators. Does it also hold for Moxie? Let me see that again. So example of a reverse divergence is when price makes a higher high while the indicator makes a lower low. Wow, do you have a ticker for that one? Because I don't think that would be very good. Price making a higher high and the indicator making a lower low, reverse divergence, that seems awfully counterintuitive, because if the Moxie indicator is a momentum-based indicator and the indicator is making a lower low, but price is making a higher high, then it seems to me at some point something's going to snap, and it would usually be price snapping to the downside because the Moxie indicator is trying to tell you what's kind of happening underneath the surface. I'm not sure that I really see anything like that that would be happening to the upside. Uh, I think one other thing, let me see if there's something I can point out here, because the other, where I thought you were going to go with that was actually, I thought you were going to say when price isn't as like this. Let me clean this up one more time. I thought you were going to be looking at here where you had price lower, but you had the Moxie indicator almost higher, or call it equal. So that would have been kind of what I would consider a reverse divergence, because the Moxie indicator is as high or higher than the previous high, but price is lower. So is that B1? Is that kind of, I know that's not what you said as far as you're typing, but that's kind of the only thing that comes to my mind. And what that indicated to me, and I remember talking about this at the time, and we were looking at breadth internals, that would generally indicate that we should get more elevation out of price. Price should go higher because the Moxie indicator is trying to say there is as much energy and as much momentum as there was last time that it was up there, but price is lower, indicating that there's more energy still in there. And so it did work, maybe not the greatest, but it did work. And so that's kind of what I would be looking at. Gosh, I'm trying to think in the more of a, and then the only other one are typical ones where you have price higher, Moxie indicator lower. That's a negative divergence. Or you have price lower and you have the Moxie indicator higher. So yeah, I mean, these are standard divergences. Gosh, I can't quite think of what, some other ones. Yeah, B1 sounds like we're getting into some weird things. That would be, you also believe that would be a reverse divergence, but a negative reverse divergence. I don't know, can you email me? Can you find me a couple examples? Because I don't know if I've ever seen, just trying to rack my brain and think if I've seen something like that. Because you're saying we're seeing price go up and then the Moxie indicator go down and it's still bullish. Yeah, that's not usually the case. Those are negatively, they're diverging from each other, and typically not a good thing, at least as far as price and all that. But yeah, let me know. Send me something where we can kind of look at this. Let's see, Wholesome Grail. It says, I think you're talking about hidden divergence, which would be when price makes a higher low. Okay, so let me draw this so we can get it. Makes a higher low, and the indicator makes a lower low, or let's see, you guys are moving on me. Or when price makes a lower high, an indicator makes a higher high. So maybe what we're, yeah, send me an email, because maybe what you're talking about, I'm looking at the tops, and looks like the Wholesome Grail, he's talking about looking at the bottoms. So maybe that's a thing. But yeah, I don't typically, I look at the tops when it's going up, and I look at the bottoms when it's going down, to find those divergences. Maybe what you're, now that we're trying to think about this, well, you could say here's a lower high, but here's your higher low for the Moxie indicator on something like that. So in that situation, but see, they don't line up. I think that's why I've never been drawn to that, or never even thought of that, because here's price going down, but you could try and say the Moxie indicator is going up. But if you look at the time of it, here's your high and here's your high. And so that's not relevant, at least not what I would be looking at, because you're trying to look low, low to the lows, and you're trying to find divergences there. Same thing with if you're looking at the highs, you're looking for high or higher, but then you're concerned about a lower high for that divergence. So I think that might be what we're talking about. Hidden divergence. Interesting. I will have to look that up and see what's going on. Yeah, as we talk about this, it seems though what we're talking about is, like if price is moving up, you're looking at the lows and trying to find divergences, as opposed to looking at the highs and looking for divergences. That's a novel one. I have no idea what to do about that one, so I will look into it and see if there's anything about it with these hidden divergences. Wholesome Grail, it's interesting that you kind of knew something about that. All right, let me take a look. Let's see. Brighter side, GFAI. Yeah, I've been watching some of these. Like, I am familiar with GFAI, but my concern, and these things can pop out of nowhere. Like we've seen this. Granted, it looked like maybe this was earnings, and they came out of nowhere. My concern is if we look at AI itself, and it's had a pretty good move here. We're right on the cusp of earnings, and again with the whole way outside of the third ATR and big gap between price and the EMA, we have seen this before. Now maybe it's different, maybe it can push a little bit further, but we're getting into an area where this is very, very extended. I'm sure we thought that with NVIDIA, although NVIDIA wasn't quite extended in the same way. NVIDIA, at least going into earnings, was starting to pull back, and it was decent. This is literally in outer space. So that's kind of the difference of what I'm seeing is NVIDIA, AMD, AI. I mean, a lot of these names are just so extended to the upside that makes me think that when I look at other names like GFAI, and any of the other ones that I'm trying to think of right now, sound that even though they might be kind of showing a little bit of promise right here, they, if the rest of the stocks moved up, like if Google, if Microsoft, if AI, if NVIDIA, if AMD, if the semis all moved up based on NVIDIA and based on kind of that AI conversation, and this name has not moved up, then what do we think that the likelihood of a name like this moving up when the rest of the big names that people actually care about are moving down? And that's the equation that I have in my head. And so if a name didn't get going during this opportunity when the rest of the sector, I mean, again, look at SOXX. If this was the sector and a name did not catch a bid based on that, then I'm not so sure it's going to catch a bid when this stuff starts pulling back. So, Nick, does that kind of make sense as to why I would be concerned about something? Let's say we have a whole bunch of oil stocks, or oil or energy is, on a tear, but then, 3 stocks didn't go up. Well, let's not trade those 3 stocks thinking that they're going to go up when the rest of the oil sector moves down. They kind of had their opportunity. Let's see, Roblox. Yeah, and then let's see, Roblox looks like it wants to try to push up. Yeah, so Nick, this is the other thing that has been happening with this market is they don't have to go. And what I've been talking about and the terminology that I've been using recently is that they have all the same ingredients. But you can be a bad baker, and you can put all the same ingredients and follow all the same rule book and recipe as somebody else, but you put it in the oven and your thing just doesn't rise because it just didn't work, or you did it incorrectly, or you put the ingredients in bad, improper ways, and you get a terrible loaf. Compared to somebody else, you get a magnificent loaf. And so this is kind of the thing that I talk about when we look at, say, Roblox, or Airbnb, if it's just an example. We have all these things that have the right ingredients to where on the monthly and weekly time frame, we have the moving averages stacked properly. Maybe the Moxie indicator is over 0. We've got all the things that they need in order to go up, but then they just don't go up, or they flitter around and they kind of go down. And the reason is just simply that they don't have to go up. Yes, maybe they're done going down. And so this is where we say, okay, we can see that they're done going down, and they're kind of going sideways. And in the course of going sideways, sometimes the moving averages will get properly stacked, but then they just won't go anywhere. They just won't have that kind of follow through. And so I think this is what we're seeing with a lot of these names, that they're just bouncing around the bottom. They're just hibernating. Maybe they don't want to go down much further, but they also don't really want to go up because, well, there's no reason for them to go up. Yes, of course, we have Palantir, and we have a handful of names that finally took off. But I think those were related to certain things. They're related to AI or the technology or something that's happening. But what you can see is, here was a time it tried going up. Here was a time it tried going up. Here's another time it tried going up. In each of those times, while there was a move, they eventually fell back down and didn't really go anywhere. Now, they didn't implode. You could see they didn't implode, but they really didn't go anywhere. It's not until, for whatever reason, they finally say, this is the right opportunity, this is the right time. And we could say, let's see, what else? I'm just trying to look. Riot. We can look at Riot again. Riot had a few false starts, like this. Here was a move, here was a move, and then finally we get a bigger move. But now look, hibernating again. And now we just have to wait and see, is it going to be able to lift? And so far, it just hasn't been able to get any traction. And I think the same thing can be said, or can be the case with things like Roblox. I mean, look how many different times, here was a move, here was a move, here's a move. Yes. And so what we have to figure out is this one going to have a move, or is it really just gonna, kind of puddle around and not do much in through here? And so, keep an eye on it, see if there is that opportunity, because sometimes they kind of come out of nowhere, like Roblox or Palantir. Palantir was kind of just flipping around the bottom and then finally took off. And it, this is what kind of catches them a little bit by surprise. Let me show you Palantir one more time, because this was the difference. If you look here on the hourly chart, now granted they were both for earnings, so what would have made us think that now is different? Well, on the surface, nothing. But as far as the charts go, you see how price could not hold the hourly 50. You see how price did hold the hourly 50. That's the best thing I can point you to. One worked, one didn't, and it's really a matter of that. Like, look, did not hold. This one did hold, and that was the only way that we could really tell the difference. And so if we look at something like Roblox, yes, potential trampoline move, but now it's got to prove itself. It's actually got to work. And some of these things just haven't been, they just haven't been. Yeah, I know, Airbnb stinker, but again, maybe just not really doing anything. See what else we're looking at. PayPal. Yeah, I think PayPal had a couple moments. Let me get back to the higher time frame. On computer. Okay, well, let's see if there we go. So you can see with PayPal, it had a few moments, a few pops right in there. But what you can see even on the weekly chart is the moving averages were actually never stacked properly. You notice how the 8 was below the 21 the entire time? You notice how price really never got over the 30, and price definitely never got even anywhere near or past the weekly 50. So it was never set up even on the weekly time frame. And if you look here on the daily, kind of coming through here, it had a few things that maybe looked like it was going to go, but look at all this chop. And while maybe in the moment you're like, oh, that could be it. Oh, that could be it. Oh, that could be a move. They never held, they never worked, they never moved. They would kind of pop and then they flop. They pop and then they flop. And this is something that we just need to be aware of with the environment right now, is that they might look like they're trying and then they won't. And they look like they'll try and then they won't. Yeah, Roku. Yeah, kind of same thing. Maybe Roku won't go much lower. Maybe it's kind of done, maybe. No guarantees. But, maybe it's done kind of going down. And yes, there were some moments where it wanted to go up. And then it looked probably like right there, like, oh, okay, we're going to finally get up and go a little bit. And it just doesn't. It just fails. You can see a couple little pops in through here, and then it just fails. And we just need to be okay with that. Now, compare that to, say, ARC F. And again, we don't know if this is actually going to go anywhere, but you can see that it's definitely a little bit stronger. It's got more potential. But yes, there was a move, and now here's a potential move. And I can't really tell if this is really going to go or not. It's got the ingredients, right? It has all the ingredients. We have the 50 over the 200. We have the 8 over the 21. We have the Moxie indicator above 0 and green. We've had a couple trampoline moves here on the hourly chart. We've got the hourly 50 over the 200. I mean, we have all the proper ingredients, but it just doesn't mean it has to go. They could just bump around the bottom and do nothing for a very long time. Top spin, thanks. Nice. GRWG, let's see, GRWG. That's yeah, more ingredients. This is in the cannabis industry, and same thing. That these names might be great someday, but not right now. They're just kind of hibernating. So they've been repriced. They probably aren't going to go much lower. No guarantees. Again, PayPal's making new lows. But something like this, apparently the market has said, hey, $3.66 is pretty much fair value. Now, maybe that's because that's what it used to be. Other than the 2020 bubble, which, this was a fun name that we traded. We made some good money off of this one. But look at this. It went up, roughly, oh, geez, 1,000%. Whew. Yeah, pretty gnarly, right? And all it did is it went right back to where it came from. You guys want to see the bubble of 2020? There you go. That is 2020 in a nutshell. If we were to explain it, it's exactly what happened. And everything just got repriced. And now we have to figure out if it's ever going to happen again. And even if these things start going again, I wouldn't expect them to be so crazy like that. I would expect them to, just do kind of normal stock stuff like that. This was straight up stuff that lasted for, 6 months or a year. So they've got the ingredients, but it doesn't mean they have to go anywhere. Yeah, so wholesome grail. When do you decide to take a position? Well, that is the challenge right now. Trust me, that is definitely the challenge. The best thing that I can show you was that Palantir example, and this is kind of the challenge of the market, is that you look around and you're like, and you've seen before, oh yeah, I've seen this before, popped on earnings and then just failed. And then you see a bunch of other names pop on earnings and then they fail. But then you get a few names that pop on earnings, hold, and go. And that's about the best I can tell you. Is what we're looking for names that actually do what we expect them to do. We look for names to follow the rules. So for example, when you see here, Palantir looked like it was starting to move up again. Again, we had price over the daily 50, the 8 over the 21. Again, all the ingredients, but then it didn't work. And that's something you just have to look at, be like, oh, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Whereas here, it did. You can see price did hold the 50 and move back up, and it worked. So it's really kind of just, did it work or did it not work? Is it following the rules? Is it doing what we wanted to do, or is it not? Let's see, MNDY. Now this one was earnings, but this is kind of my point again, is if you look at Palantir compared to Monday.com, look what it did. See how well it held the moving average on the hourly chart? Compare that to here, where it did not hold the moving average. And this one leading up to earnings was a little bit challenging, but you can see it held right there. Now, I wouldn't have wanted to be in it so close to earnings right there to deal with that dip, so I wouldn't have experienced that. And then it just shot up and became unbuyable. Up here it's unbuyable, or at least it's not. The risk to reward is not good, because you can see here it's way up there outside of 30 ATR and gapping off the 8 EMA and all that kind of stuff. And while we've had a bigger push this time, we're starting to get back into the area, like where I was showing you guys AMD and NVIDIA and SOXX. It's getting back into an area where this is starting to become very risky to initiate along up here. It's starting to get into areas that price does not typically like to stay up there for very long. Now, do you want to short it? Well, maybe not. It's tough to short things that are in an uptrend, because you never know if they're just going to come straight back down, or they can kind of bounce around for a while. Like look at Riot. Riot pulled back and then went sideways. You can see here that Monday.com pulled back and then went even lower. Great. But there are other names that can just go sideways, and so it is challenging to short things that are in an uptrend. Look at DV. Here are some examples. Not the best place to buy, not the best place to buy, not the best place to buy. Same thing here, same thing here, and same thing here. And if we're talking about ingredients and things that have commonality, what is kind of the thing that is common between all these points of not being the greatest place to initiate along? Well, generally speaking, third ATR and some sort of gap off the 8 EMA. And so where are we currently? Right up there. So is this a great place to start making, just to start buying it, to be like, oh, I think this is going to go higher from here? No, you're late. This is way too late to the game if you're going to be trying to buy or go long up here. That is not a good spot. Now, maybe if it pulls back, then you can reconsider it. Buying dips in this market seems to be the way. Continuations don't really work because in another market, this would have been a great trade and this would have been a great trade if they had broken out. But that's not what's happening typically in this market. So just kind of make sure you get the ebb and the flow, the ebb and the flow, and the ebb and the flow. And then of course, yes, we get some crazy names that do some crazy stuff, but those are few and far between. But yeah, wholesome grain, yes, when it held the hourly 50. That makes sense. Think you basically apply the same knowledge consistently and manage risk. You got it. And then you just figure out if it's going to work or not work. Let me see if there's anything else. Let's see, hidden divergence. Let's see, talking about uptrend, you'd see higher low on price and a lower low on the indicator, which can be a decent buy the dip signal. Yeah, you guys will have to send me some emails about that, some tickers that you're thinking of that make that work. All right, then let's see. There was another one. FOUR. Yeah, see here again, some kind of examples that you don't really want to be buying the highs, and I've been struggling with that too because those are typically my situation where I like to buy what looks like it's going to be a continuation. But in this market, buying at highs, just not doing it. You got to figure out where the lows are, and sometimes that can get you in trouble because you buy a low and it just keeps going lower. But generally speaking, you want to buy the dip right in through here, and you buy the dip. And then you'll see, like, even look at 4. It's going up and up and up and up, and now it's just kind of going down. So this has changed directions. And notice that on the way up, you had the 8 over the 21, you had price over the 50, and generally speaking, you had the Moxie indicator going up and above 0. But then look, you have 8 below the 21, you have price below the 50, and you have the Moxie indicator below 0. So there's nothing, unless you're going to try and short 4, there's nothing to do with this name. And here's another example. You can see that price was just getting a little bit up there. Getting a little up there, getting a little extended, starting to pull away from these moving averages. Same thing here, pulling away from the moving averages. And now they're kind of working their way back. Are they going to keep going down? Are they going to implode? I don't know. Are they just gently moving down closer to support? Maybe. We'll have to see. Yeah, top spin, I don't think Zillow, okay, so this goes back to the conversation. I think it has all the right ingredients, but I don't know if it's going to be an awesome name. I don't know if it's really going to take off. It might. And so kind of what I was talking about with Wholesome Grail is if you want something like this and if you think it's going to work, and again, it's not just about Moxie and it's not just about the rules. We have to kind of have a little bit of a thematic understanding. Like why is NVIDIA? Why is AMD? Why are semis exploding right now? Well, it's because of AI and because of computer technology and stuff like that. That's why. Okay, Zillow. Why would Zillow be really, really taking off right now? Well, maybe because interest rates are about to pause. Maybe that's why. Okay, and so maybe inflation's coming down. Maybe that. But it's probably not going to be the same rip-roaring kind of activity that some of these other AI-related names. But yes, we have the same ingredients. We have price over the monthly 10. You have price following the weekly 21. You've got all the right things. And now it's really just going to be up to the market and this particular stock if it's going to hold those things and if it's going to continue to work. So if this is going to continue, I would say it needs to pretty much hold the weekly 21 in order to keep going up. And let's see, look at this. And if you look at the daily chart and the hourly chart, well, I would say it pretty much needs to continue following the daily 50. But I look at this now, and this Moxie indicator does not look good. Do you see the difference? At least back here, you kind of have the Moxie indicator moving up, moving up, moving up. This looks very deflated. And if you look, even though Z maybe looked all right on the monthly and weekly, this looks like it's about to cross below zero. And this looks like it's probably getting close to actually falling. And if you look at the hourly chart, there's actually no setup. You have the Moxie indicator below zero, and it's not really working. I don't think that's working for us. So no, I'm looking at this again. I wouldn't think that this looks very good. All right, so meta call credit spreads. So you're trying to see if this is going to move down. Well, this is kind of why I say it is challenging to try to short an uptrend, because even though there were a couple times that price was overbought, and yes, there was a bit of a pullback, you could see it really just pulled right back to trend and kept moving up. So Wholesome Grail, what you're trying to say is you're trying to say, I think this is going to either go down or is something other than going up if you're going to be selling those call credit spreads. Now, you might be correct. I wouldn't say you're entirely wrong because, off the 8 and 30 ATR, it is very overbought. But then you just have to figure out your timeline and how far you think it's going to go, because even this one was overbought. And you could see it, yes, it came down a little bit, but it ended up continuing to the high side. So yes, I think it is near term overbought and it's likely to chill out and probably go sideways to down, but I don't know if it's going to continue to do that for longer, simply because this has been an uptrend. It hasn't rolled over yet and it hasn't confirmed anything in the downtrend. It's simply overbought. So if you're playing it only because it's overbought, you can be right and you can make money. You just have to understand the context that you are playing an overbought situation, which could be temporary. And once that temporary situation has been resolved, it could continue to go up unless we see otherwise. So I think that's kind of the best way to think about it, best way to frame it. And as I said, it can be lucrative. You just have to understand your context and setup for that. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to get going. And for those in the Moxie room, I will be back with you in about 30 minutes or so. I'll be in the options room, and we'll have a good time there. So, yeah, great conversation with you guys. Hopefully I get a couple emails with you for some examples of those inverse reverse divergences, and we'll see what we can do about them. All right, guys. Thanks again. See you soon.